For everybody in this group, welcome and thank you for joining our voyage to Antarctica. You'll have the opportunity to have a true small group experience. You'll have the chance to ask questions, chat, and connect. But for now, we just ask that you have your lines muted and your video on. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to leave them in the chat box, raise your hand, or unmute your line. For everyone watching, I'll be sharing questions from Neil throughout. So please leave them in the chat box and we'll get to them. We'll get to as many as we can. So if you're all ready, Neil's going to take us on a virtual voyage to the Antarctic Peninsula and experience what it's like to sail aboard the G Expedition.
Thank you very much, Cass. I'm going to share my screen here. Very lovely to have everyone on board. The amount of support is overwhelming. Happy to see a lot of fresh faces and some of my previous travelers and a lot of friends and colleagues. This means a lot to me and happy to be representing the G Expedition. Myself, Neil Rabjohn, I'm the assistant expedition leader on board the ship, and I've also been a tour leader in South America for a number of years. Just with this virtual tour we're about to take, I want to make sure that you guys understand I represent an enormous team of expedition staff, the crew on board the ship. Really happy to be representing them and happy to be taking you to this beautiful frozen continent that we have down at the south of this beautiful planet of ours. It can evoke a lot of reactions and there's a lot of things that comes to mind. So I want to kick this off with a question to you. You can type in the chat box, or if you're here on the tour with us, you can share what are some of the things that you think about when you think of Antarctica, and what are some things that you might want to see whilst we're down there. So there's no wrong answers, just you can type it in the chat or share with us here.
Hi Neil, Mary and David here. We joined you on the last expedition down to Antarctica, so expectations.
It's lovely to have you.
Thank you. Expectations were more than exceeded then, so it's hard to know what we could expect any better, to be honest, apart from going further south.
Yeah, that's the thing is we do have a number of different expeditions that you can take. So if you check on Gadventures.com and you search for the expedition, you can see the different itineraries that we have through the Scotia Sea. Lots to see, and every voyage is totally unique based on the things that we see down there. Anybody else?
We've got the chat box going. If you want to hear what we've got so far, we've got lots of penguins, wildlife, whales, big ice, snow, vast islands, unspoilt wilderness, killer whales, seasick, being back on the ship. I think we've got a lot of excited folks here. Leopard seals, and the list keeps going on and on.
Well, we'll see what kind of luck we have today in our tour, but thanks for the commentary and for the reactions. Let's dive right into it. So welcome to your virtual tour. So Antarctica, it's been on your bucket list for quite some time, but now you're finally making it happen. You decided that this was the year that you were going to make that, it might be a seventh continent for you, happen. And you've flown a long way, all the way down to the bottom of South America here to Tierra del Fuego. You took your GCO's advice and you booked a window seat for this final leg of your air voyage, so you can fly over the beautiful bottom of the Andes here into the small town of Ushuaia. This is where most of the Antarctic tourism departs from. You've got the pier right here, and so you might have seen on your flight in a bunch of ships making their way up the Beagle Channel. One of those is likely the G Expedition. So you've made your way in, taxi ride into the hotel, and that evening you found the welcome desk and you got your welcome packet, which answers most of your questions about how you're going to be embarking the following afternoon. So you've traveled a long way and now you can rest easy knowing that tomorrow it's probably going to be quite busy, but you've made it and your adventure is about to begin. And sure enough, you see your ship in the harbor, and that's this. It's our beautiful red, white, and blue G Expedition. You might have seen the zodiacs going around that morning, but now it's at pier. You've taken the bus, and now you're on your way to the pier to walk on board. So it will be a busy day, but recognize that this is it. You've arrived. You are home. Your bags have already been delivered to your cabin. You won't need to repack those for quite some time. We really want to make sure that you feel at home, and there's a huge team on board ready to make that happen. You step on board, there's a big lineup, you get a little plastic card, people are taking your photo, it's all very confusing, but you've got a lot of friendly faces directing you where you need to go, and quickly you hear over the PA that it's time to head to the expedition lounge because we're going to be having our safety briefing. This is Jonathan, one of our expedition leaders. So you're up there in the expedition lounge. An hour ago, you were cruising the streets of Ushuaia doing some last minute shopping. And now you're with 134 strangers wearing these really fashionable life jackets.
Hey, Neil, I don't want to cut you off, but I don't think we're seeing the pictures right now. We're just seeing the Google Earth frame.
Okay. Let me give that a minute. Thanks, Kat.
No worries. I think we're all working from home right now and understanding technical difficulties happen often. Awesome. Yep, we see the ship now.
Beautiful. There's our beautiful ship. Thank you, Cass. That beautiful red, white, and blue. And now we're stepping on board the ship. We're getting our photo taken, getting our cards. You see Jonathan here. He's telling us we need to head on up to the expedition lounge. And we got our beautiful bright fluorescent orange life jacket. It's all very strange. There's somebody up at the front demonstrating our emergency survival suit. And then the captain tells us we need to do a man overboard drill, a lifeboat rescue drill. So you head on up, you meet our safety officer, Roy, here. And once that's done, we want to celebrate and say goodbye to Ushuaia. Typically, the weather is supposed to be a little cloudy and rainy and windy, but we have very good luck today, and we've got beautiful views of the mountains as we head up the historic Beagle Channel. So on the back deck, we've got our musician Pablo. He's playing some tunes. The bartenders, Joel and Randell, are serving up some ice cream. Nice way to kick off our departure. But before you know it, we're back in the expedition lounge because the hotel manager is going to walk us through the ship. So again, this is what it looks like. You probably have already found your cabin. It may look like this, or it may look like this. We have a number of categories that you can select from. So more information on that is available at gadventures.com, searching for the expedition. We've got floor plans, but rest assured that inside all the cabins, it's very clean, comfortable, and you'll have everything that you need. There are the outer decks here. And so you'll be able to see in all directions. It's a very beautiful viewing platform. So you want to spend a lot of time out there. You're going to see a lot of wildlife. Another great spot for that is the bridge. We have an open door policy. So most of the time, except when we're raising, lowering anchor, or doing different maneuvering, you can head on up there, chat with the captain, all the officers. They're very personable. And we've got some binoculars for you to borrow up there as well. Just don't touch too many of the buttons. Here's the reception, looking very empty in this photo, but there's usually a lot of people milling around and there's staff there who can answer any of your questions. In the back, we've got the Polar Bear Bar. This is where a lot of the magic happens in the evening. The bartenders are up there slinging drinks. Plus we have our musician. Here we have Pablo, who is out there playing music every other night, keeping it going. If you'd rather have something a little more quiet, we've got our library, which is always well stocked with books about the polar regions, and our wonderful dining room. You can see how bright and airy it is, and windows on all sides, so if there's any wildlife happening outside, then you'll be able to see that. This is where a lot of the expectations get exceeded. The food is so good. The kitchen crew, they work miracles in there, and they serve up a big variety of food. You've got a whole host of dishes, all different parts of the world, all different diets, whatever dietary needs that you have. You just let the head waiter know, and they have that all sorted out and absolutely delicious. Got a few photos. You can see we do a lot of seafood. We got some sushi there, really well prepared dishes, and a lot of dessert. We serve a lot of a la carte dinners, and as we head back into our Antarctic season, the food service is going to be probably a lot more a la carte, but just know everything that they do is incredible, and that's where a lot of people really have their expectations exceeded. After all that food, you might need to pay a visit to the gym. It's all very sharp here. After the gym, we've got our sauna, and the sauna you access through the masterpiece of our ship, which is the mudroom. But we're going to talk more about that later. For now, I'll introduce you to the most important part of the ship, and that's our crew. We have, again, like I mentioned, 70 expedition staff and crew in total, and 134 guests maximum. The dedication and the work, professionalism, and passion that this team brings to their work every single day inspires me without a doubt. They know your name right away. Everyone puts their personality on display, whether they are the kitchen and dining room team, which you see here, headed by Chef Tony. Here we have Chef Ricky. Your cabin steward, this is Alex, it might be him, turns down your room every day. They really go over and above. You're really going to get to know everyone on board as they get to know you. So it really becomes a family, and you do feel at home. This is Randell serving up some hot chocolate after a nice cold operation. There's also our wonderful deck team who do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of raising, lowering the anchor, preparing the Zodiacs, keeping everything safe on deck. Fire patrol, they're absolute rock stars, and they're going to really keep us all safe. So we kick things off as we head into the Drake Passage with a captain's cocktail. So I've got my coffee here. I just want to say cheers to all of you, and welcome to our virtual tour. You can see our captain's shield right here. And so I have a question for everyone on the tour. Well, we posted already. Cass, do we have any other reflections on what people might want to see, or expectations of things that they might see down in Antarctica?
There's been a lot around wildlife, whales, killer whales, emperor penguins, the Polar Plunge, and the list keeps going on, the end of the world.
There's all tons of wildlife, maybe even some specific landings that our friends and colleagues might have done that we would be interested in doing. It would be nice that we can get all of that kind of stuff done, but this here is Lauren Farmer, our expedition leader, a great mentor of mine, and she is here breaking down the answer to those questions, which is, we would love to go to all those places and be able to tell you where we're going, but this is an expedition. This is not a simple bus tour. We are on a ship heading down to the most remote, inaccessible continent that there is, and everything that we do is guided by safety conditions, which will include the weather, will include sea and ice conditions, as well as the wildlife. That's always going to dictate where we're going. So we can't give you a big itinerary at this stage or in the booking stage of what we're going to see on which day. It's always up to those conditions. We use a few tools to find out where we're going to be going. One is windy.com. You can see here the weather patterns that are going through the Drake Passage. You can see a lot of really scary purples and deep reds. That would indicate that this is going to be a very rough Drake Passage. But luckily I took this from a few days ago, so that's not what we're running into today. You can see here closer to the peninsula, at the very far right-hand side, by the Antarctic Sound area, we've got a lot of purples and reds. So that would indicate we're going to have much better luck down in the southwest towards the Gerlache, where we've got nice greens and blues, where we're going to have nice calmer seas for good operations. So we come up with the game plan at the beginning of the tour. We keep that close to our chest, and then every day we meet back in the expedition lounge where we're going to have our recap and briefing. We speak about what we've done that day, and then we tell you the plan for the next day. So never earlier than that, because the weather is kind of unreliable 48 hours out, and we don't want to set any unreasonable expectations. But you can expect the unexpected, and that we are going to see some pretty cool stuff. Penguins, it's pretty likely we're going to see penguins, but as for the other wildlife, leopards, seals, killer whales, we really just don't know. I can't tell you where we're going to go, but I can tell you what we'll be doing. We might have had a peek during a lifeboat drill up on top deck of our Zodiacs. These are the vehicles that we use to get from the ship to the shore and to explore everything that we see. So we typically do 2 operations in a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. An operation might be heading to land, doing a proper landing. So we use the Zodiacs to shuttle us back and forth, and we have about 2.5, maybe 3 hours, all dependent on weather and conditions, on land to explore, do the hikes if they're available, spend time on the beach, hang out with the wildlife, as well as maybe going for a short Zodiac exploration around the area. It may also be advantageous to us to simply do a Zodiac cruise into the nearby area, checking out some of the glaciers or some wildlife, and get the kayaks in the water. So we'd explore some of the ice and have a nice time in the Zodiacs, 10 people at a time. We have 14 of them, so we can always ensure that everyone gets out onto the water. An operation might also be simply a ship's cruise, because for that part of the peninsula that we're seeing, it's best that we are just on the ship with our giant cameras and exploring from there, because it's such a wonderful viewing platform. And who's going to be helping you out during this? You've got the expedition team. So this is, again, a hugely dedicated group of individuals, a variety of backgrounds, specializing in marine biology, ornithology, historians, geologists, and so there's always something we want to share. We're always so passionate about this continent and this part of the world. There's at least 15 of us, so you've got better than 10-to-1 ratio of expedition staff to guests. So we're always on hand, both on the ship, in the Zodiacs, on shore. A really dedicated team. I'm just flipping through these photos, but these are my extended family. I really love everyone that you see here, and we can't wait to see you on board the ship and down in Antarctica. We head to shore before an operation begins. We bring our emergency shore equipment here, and we flag any hiking routes. We watch for any conflicts with the local wildlife to make sure that we are setting a perimeter that is going to give us, as visitors, a nice time on shore, and it's not going to interfere with the wildlife that's there. On the ship, we also run our educational program, so it might be some lectures on the history, geology, ornithology. So on sea days, or if there's ever a time where we can fit one in, or if there's inclement weather, then we're here and offering lectures. We also operate our citizen science program. So this involves everything we can do as an industry to collect data on behalf of scientists. So that might be doing a Zodiac exploration where we're measuring the phytoplankton in some of the fjords that are there, measuring temperature of the water, doing seabird surveys, cloud observations, and taking photos of whales. There's lots that we can do as an industry, so we do it, and we invite you to help us out. On our crossing of the Drake Passage, we'll also have our photographer in residence do a presentation on photography and ways that you can get the most out of your device in the Antarctic, whether you're working with one of those giant bazooka cameras or just an iPhone. Here we have our photographer in residence, Simon, who has taken most of the beautiful photos involved in this presentation here. He's going to give us that presentation ahead of our arrival in Antarctica so that we're ready. We've also got our artist in residence here, Yvonne. She leads watercolor sessions on our sea days. She might also be happy to paint with you on land so that you can end up with a really unique souvenir to bring home after your time down south. There's also our kayak program that we operate. So this is an optional extra that you would select at your booking stage. This would involve kayaking instead of doing the operation of going to land, unless you wanted to. So you can learn more about this at the booking stage. I'm going to take us kayaking on this virtual tour. And another option is the camping program that we offer, where you would spend one night, if weather allows, on Antarctica. So certainly a badge that you would earn that not many of your friends can say they've done. It's sometimes a messy job, but it's all part of the work, and we really love it. During this crossing, we're also going to have a very important briefing that is about IATO. IATO is the International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators. So it's essentially the industry that has come together to set guidelines to ensure that we are only having a minor or transitory impact on the Antarctic environment and minimizing our impact in every single way. So these guidelines would include minimum distances away from the wildlife, whether they're on land or in the water, making sure that we're not leaving any trash or any snow angels or rock cairns, any sign of our visit. We want to make sure that it's as pristine as possible. And it requires that we only have 100 guests on shore at a time. So with our 130 plus, we make sure that we have only 100, no more on shore. And then between our kayaking program and people doing zodiac explorations, we're able to stay within those guidelines. So it's a big passion project on behalf of the industry to make sure that we are observing those. So we have a big briefing, making sure that everyone on board is briefed about the instructions. We will enforce those distances on shore. Don't take it personally if we ask you to step back a little bit. We just want to make sure that the wildlife is well taken care of. And for your own viewing, we always have the guidelines up in the mudroom and aboard the ship about the individual sites and wildlife that we're going to see. This briefing is also going to tell us how the mudroom works. This is the staging area where we put on our bright red parka and our boots and then swipe ourselves off the ship to make our way down the gangway. You can see some of the wonderful deck team helping us out into the Zodiacs so that we can safely get in. We always make sure that everyone sits and slides. Sit and slide. You're going to hear that phrase 600 times during the voyage. By the time you get home and you watch your TV on the couch, you're going to be sitting and sliding. It allows us to make sure we have safe time in these Zodiacs and we can go off on our adventure. So how do we dress? You're going to be receiving this beautiful red parka. It's very warm, very waterproof. On the first night, we have a bit of a parka party, and you're going to want to make sure that you've got different layers inside and your waterproof trousers. Very stylish. You can have any color so long as it's red. And you'll be happy to know you don't need to wear that big bulky life jacket you saw in the safety demonstration. We use these little horse collar ones, which are very good for walking around using your camera whilst we're on shore. And you don't need to bring your own boots. We've got plenty on board, so we hand these out after the IATO briefing. Here's Eric slaying them out. Very warm, good for walking, lots of traction, and 100% waterproof. So we hand those out. And as well, we use this opportunity to perform our biosecurity. Biosecurity is very important because when we travel, there's different organisms and plant life and seeds and spores that might be on our clothes, on our backpacks, that we don't want to introduce to a new environment. So here we are disinfecting all the boots. We also provide this free service where we can vacuum any of your outer gear, your trousers, your backpacks, your camera bags, making sure that all of that organic material that might be introduced to a penguin colony, for example, is eliminated before we arrive in Antarctica. So you can see it's very busy Drake Passage crossing. It takes a day and a half, sometimes 2 days, depending on how far south we want to get and what the weather is. So we heard, Cass, that someone was wondering about the Drake Passage. So you can see it might look like this. nice flat blue horizon. We call this the Drake Lake. At the same time, you might experience the Drake Shake. This is when the water gets really crazy and the waves will be rocking the ship. We have very wonderful stabilizers on the ship, kind of wings that extend from the sides that will keep things as level as possible, but it is a possibility. Some people say, you know, I want to feel it. I want to feel this thing getting going. No, you don't. It's fun for about 10 minutes, but then the novelty runs off really fast. Let's presume, though, on our crossing, we've got a beautiful Drake Lake. And it's wonderful that it's so nice because we're getting a call from the back of the ship. We've got one of our naturalists, Kevin. He's reporting a lot of bird activity off the back deck. And sure enough, we've got a lot of Cape petrels here, the pintados doing figure eights off the back of the ship. So let's head back there. We'll do a bird survey. You can see we've got plenty of albatross and petrels overhead. Beautiful black-browed albatross here. It's got a wingspan of about 2.5 meters, but as huge as that is, this is only a medium-sized albatross. This prehistoric looking figure is a giant petrel, and really wonderful to see the stuff from the ship. So a busy crossing, but now we're coming into view of the continent itself. So let's dive in. Beautiful. So there's that Scotia Sea that we're heading across. So you can see how much territory we have to cover. And now we're finally arriving. We've got Antarctica in sight. And this part is the Bransfield Strait. It's a body of water that separates these, the South Shetland Islands, from the Antarctic Peninsula itself. So the South Shetland Islands have a lot of beautiful landing sites. And let's go to our first one, which is going to be Deception Island. Deception Island is this beautiful volcanic caldera that has been really important for the whalers who were down in centuries past. But for now, it's a really nice place for us to visit. So we come in through this one section here into this central bay. And Whalers Bay is a spot where you can really see a lot of the whaling remains. You see a lot of the big vats here for the whale oil. You got this beautiful volcanic beach. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Very black, very steamy. It's a spot where we can go for a hike up into the mountain, or you can spend time on the beach with the wildlife that is there. You can see a lot of the old whaling boats and the remains, a bit of snow, more steam coming off of this. There's been some volcanic activity in the late 60s, so it's something that we're always keeping an eye on. But for now, we've got a nice day. We've got this beautiful lookout over top of the water. And we're seeing some of our first penguins. So those of you looking forward to seeing penguins, we got some. These are the chin straps. You can see how they get their name, black and white. And always on the lookout, very beautiful. So Deception Island, and now we're going to make our way over the Bransfield Strait to a spot at the very end of the peninsula, a very favorite landing site of mine called Brown Bluff. You can see from this Google Maps image how it gets its name. You've got this towering bluff just above the landing site here, fresh dusting of snow, and this is a good spot where we can do a hike. You can see our landing site here, and we've got this flagged trail going up this snowy route. It gives us amazing views of the ice shelf in the distance, the visitors down here checking out the penguin colony, and oh my, we've got a parent Gen 2 penguin here with the chick looking up, wondering if everything's going to be okay. I really love this photo. Do you guys like that? What do you think of these two?
Very cute.
Very cozy. This photo would have been taken probably a couple weeks into January because the penguins, they follow the cycle of arriving in the springtime, which is about October, and then they've got a really busy time between October and March to find their mate, reconstruct their nest. They've got to lay their egg, incubate that egg, and then the penguin hatches here around the early weeks of January, and then they're protecting this chick, feeding it, making sure it grows as quickly as possible, protecting it from the predators until it's finally large enough to head into the sea for their winter lap around the southern oceans, and before making their way back in October to the same landing site. When you see them, they're running along the beach, they elicit laughter. It's kind of the only proper reaction that you can have to seeing such a creature. I don't want to say ridiculous, but they just make you happy. Compare that with in the Arctic when we see polar bears, where they're so stoic, they sort of command that silence. Meanwhile, down here, we've got so many penguins that all of us can see them and enjoy them on our own. But when you learn more about them, how hard they work, the amount of swimming and feeding and fishing that they do, and how much they protect their offspring and each other from the various predator birds or the leopard seals in the water, you realize how hard working these creatures are and how much respect they deserve. Just love penguins. Here we got some gentoos, always recognizable by this white eye patch above their eye, and then the adelies, which have just black and white head and then sort of stubbier nose. Lots of different species, all sharing the same beach. They like to group together on the pieces of ice so that they can all jump into the water at the same time. It gives them strength in numbers because there are leopard seals out there that may want to pick them out. If 30 penguins jump into the water at the same time, 29 of them might be able to go out and have a good meal. So they dive in and then looking out for this guy. So really fun landing here at Brown Bluff. What do you guys think? Nearby, we're going to reposition over lunch hour, and we're going to arrive to Paulette Island. Paulette is very special. You've got 100,000 breeding pairs of Adelie penguins here, along with some shags. So it's a really spectacular place. But let's pretend that we're off kayaking. Now again, kayaking is something that you would do every landing, so it's an optional activity that you would book at the booking stage, where for every one of our landings, you're going to be in the kayaks, enjoying the landing from there. Unless you choose to go to land, but that's up to you. But let's presume we're kayaking. You can see how close we can get to these adelies that are here on the floating ice, just having a break or waiting for their friends. So it's a different, unique perspective that you get. You're in these tandem canoes. You're led by a specific kayak master and another kayak guide. So it might be my colleague Phil or my colleague Sarah or my buddy Rex. We're taking you out there. A lot of close-up photos. And if you see some whale activity, then that just makes it that much more special. You can see on land here, you've got the Adelie parents feeding the chicks. These chicks are a little further on. They've got the really fluffy down, and they're having a bit of a meal here. It smells not so great because there's so many penguins, but that's nature, right? We want to experience Antarctica with all 5 of our senses. Beautiful shots here. You just see the huge amount of penguins on land and those massing on the ice. These are those shags that I was talking about. They're also black and white, but you know they're not penguins when they start to fly. No flying penguins. Some more beautiful images here. Amazing water, lots of penguins. This beautiful master here about to go for a swim. And this far up the peninsula, you can see in the distance these tabular bergs. These are the huge pieces of the ice shelf that finally break off, and they can sometimes be the size of small or large cities, and they can take a really long time to melt down. So seeing these things drifting in Southern Ocean, especially at sunset from the polar bear bar, it's just awe-inspiring thing to see. So we're very lucky today. But we're seeing on Windy that here at the northern part of the peninsula that it's going to be pretty rough seas tomorrow. So we're going to move down here to a place called the Gerlache Strait. So this is further down the peninsula, and you can see all the variety of coves and different harbors that present a lot of really great spots for Zodiac cruises and landings down in the peninsula area. So you see a lot of activity down here. It means a short commute, and there's always plenty of places to go. Let's jump into a place that we call the Arera Channel. Some good islands in here. Let's have a visit to Danko Island this morning. See just the views that you're getting on all sides. If you've done travel and gone to see glaciers anywhere in the world, in New Zealand, Alaska, or Patagonia, you've got that going on here, except it's literally everywhere that you look. Let's hop on down to Danko. As we make our way, we go to the landing site, and you can see our emergency bags here have been visited by this beautiful elephant seal wiener. So this is just a young baby that has showed up and thinks that the emergency bags are its buddies or a nice soft spot for a siesta. So we're just gonna keep our distance and let him hang out. But look at his beautiful face, big doughy cow eyes, love it. On Danko, we have the option to climb up the island a little bit. So we'll flag a trail, making sure it's nice and walkable and not too slippery. You can see those giant pieces of ice in the sea there. We've got the Zodiac cruisers out there, the kayakers, and you can see in the foreground some of the penguin colonies that are up on the hill. And then we bump into Lynn. Lynn, in addition to being the sweetest lady in the Southern Ocean, her voice is like happiness in sound form. She's up here to provide interpretation and guide us about what we're seeing with these Gen 2 chicks here. They've got their nests, which are established out of the rocks. There's no typical bird's nest that you would see because there's no trees or plants on Antarctica. So they make this little rock scrape using these pebbles. Sometimes they steal them from each other, but it provides a spot where they can incubate their eggs safely and protect them from the predators. But if we didn't want to do that big hike, we can hang out down on the beach, and there's a lot of Gen 2s that are very curious, walking by. We keep our distance, and we're just taking photos. This beautiful master, and if you've got a camera that can go underwater, you can really see how beautiful these creatures are with swimming. They're like Top Gun fighter jets down there with how they can bank and move and maneuver. Just beautiful. So Danko, quite special. How are we doing, Cass? Are we getting some questions on the chat? Some reactions?
We're getting a couple of questions.
Sure.
The exposition team is actually coming in and helping answer the questions, which is awesome and super helpful.
It's a team. It's a team effort. Exactly. I love you.
Yeah, so there were a lot of questions around the kayaking, but I think most of them were answered. But we did just get one question from Julie that she's asking, generally speaking, will the Gadventures ship be the only one at each docking area during the trip, or is it fairly busy with other tour operators?
That's a very good question, and I'm happy to say that yes, everywhere that we go, we will be the only ship. There's a large and growing number of ships in the industry, in the fleet that's operating. But again, that organization I spoke about, IATO, which is by and from the industry, one of its mandates is to facilitate cooperation throughout the industry. And part of that is ensuring that we have a booking system so that no landing site has more than one ship at it at all times. At the very beginning of the season, we all kind of book out slots at the various landing sites with how we might want it to go. But as I mentioned, the weather, wildlife, and sea and ice conditions will dictate where we're finally able to go. However, as things change, we can then go into that booking system, see which spaces are free, what's open for that morning or afternoon, so that we can visit if our plans change and ensure that we'll be the only people there. We saw this beautiful Google image of the Gerlache Strait here, and you can see the distance between all these places is not very far. So in a pinch, if we needed to change our itinerary because of weather, then we're able to do that. And there's plenty of landing sites that are out of view of the other ships where we'll be able to get to have a wonderful landing or Zodiac cruise to provide that variety of wildlife and things that we're seeing. And we won't be bumping into any other ships because yes, we want to do that so that we, as visitors, we get a nice pristine visit, and as well that booking system allows us to ensure that the wildlife and the landing site is not going to be overstressed with multiple groups on the same spot. So very good question. I hope I answered the question.
Definitely.
Anything else, Cass?
No, a few past travelers just chimed in while you were speaking that they didn't see any other ships while they were on the expedition as well. So
wonderful
answer from travelers and our expert.
Cool. So we're going to leave Danko now, and we're going to go for our afternoon down to a place called Base Brown. Base Brown is here in Paradise Harbor, and here we're going to be able to see a little bit more human activity. It's an Argentine base that's here. After the 1959 Antarctic Treaty, it was mandated that any bases are there only for scientific purposes. We can get a look at this base here. So this is just a summer only base where there's Argentine crew that will do some measurements and scientific recordings, but they're always happy to be hospitable and allow visitors to come and check out the site. They've got a beautiful hill behind where nice little slide route, a lot of Gentoos at the base, and just a wonderful spot all around. You can see the mountains with this huge dusting of ice and snow. It's like someone has dropped confectioner's sugar over top of the mountainous landscape. Here's the view from the top of that hike that I mentioned. You can see the base at the bottom, a lot of activity in the water, kayakers and Zodiac cruisers. Just incredible photos that you're going to be revisiting for the rest of your life. And as well, you can take this nice slide. We always have some of our staff there, making sure it's one at a time. And down, if you didn't do the hike, you've got some Gentoo chicks here at the base. There might be one or two personnel there to have a chat, but a really nice spot. But we've got some time left in our landing here, so why don't we hop in the Zodiacs and go for a Zodiac exploration. Can you believe it? Here in Paradise Harbor, we've got some humpback whales that are making their way through. So this is a very lucky photo that we've been able to get the tail fluke coming up and then get a nice photo of that. You can see the very unique shape that it has on the back of its tail fluke from the way that it's grown up or different weathering that it might have taken over the course of its life. It's sort of like a fingerprint that we have. It's a very unique snapshot of this one particular animal that we can take this photo, upload it to a site called Happy Whale, and Happy Whale is going to be able to tell you any other places in the world that this animal has been seen. So it's a bit of a citizen science that we can do and some great photos. So we've had a great time here at Base Brown, and this was going to be our spot where we were going to go camping. So our camping master, Matt, has been over here checking out the typical camping spot that we go to, but he's reported, unfortunately, that on land the snow looks good, but there's just far too many of these Weddell seals that are there having a snooze. It's not something we expected, but unfortunately, due to these wildlife conditions, we don't want to disturb them. We're not going to be able to go camping here. It's a little disappointing, but again, everything that we do is dictated by the conditions on the ground, and we've got too many of these cuties here that we won't be able to have a camping experience that's not going to interfere with them. But we can have here for dinner a nice, beautiful barbecue on the back deck, headed by the team and Chef Tony, serving up some delicious meal. We've even got the captain out there and our purser, Jonathan, serving up some of the mulled wine. So to everything, there's a silver lining. But again, no camping. The next morning, we're going to head to a spot that is very special in this part of the peninsula, and it's called the Lemaire Channel. So it's this narrow passage that all the ships love to pass through. It's a spot where sometimes we see some whales transiting through. You've got beautiful mountains on either side So it's just really special to be out on deck. You can set up the camera for a time lapse, for example. Be out on the bow. We've got our historian Gerard here, answering some questions, always there to provide interpretation. Just a really nice spot to watch the continent go by. So this is one of the ship cruise operations that we do. So it's a nice spot for a coffee in the morning. And then we swing around to the other side of this island for a place that we love. It's called Port Charcoal. And I'm actually going to dive us into the landing site. We've got a nice Google Street View down here, and you can see why it's so special. These really primordial rocks, islands in the bay, lots of wildlife out there, the peninsula connecting us to the island. In the distance, we've got our ship, the G Expedition at anchor. It always provides really good scale for your photos. That's about 100 meters end to end, so you can really see a lot. This rock cairn here is in honor of Charcot's voyage with the Francais. So there's a bit of a history that we can share up here, but it's just a great spot. We usually bring half the group on land and then half the group out in the Zodiacs, because this is a spot where we have an iceberg graveyard, where a lot of those big giant bergs, they come into the land, they get grounded on shore and then melt away for our viewing pleasure. We've got some Zodiacs out there, and this is what we're looking at. Again, this image, this shape is like this today. It's going to be totally different tomorrow, meaning we're getting absolute unique views of these pieces of ice. It's just a wonderful way that nature puts on a show for us of the many ways. And it's a good spot where crab eater seals like to get a snooze. Beautiful soft skin. Look at that beautiful face. Don't you just want to bring one of these guys home? If you do, too bad. And the humpback whales really love this spot. Yeah, we don't bring any wildlife, seals, penguins, expedition staff home with us. Here we go. Now, we had someone in the chat say that they would have wanted to go further south. That's always a thing. And one of our itineraries is called Quest for the Antarctic Circle. That goes south of the Antarctic Circle, which is somewhere around here. And we're not going to go there on this voyage just for time, but down here you've got Crystal Sound, you've got the Gullet, a lot of historical former base locations. You've got Marguerite Bay with some really wild landings. So I won't take us down there now, but just show some photos of how everything is just so much larger in scale. You can see some of the sea ice forming in Crystal Sound. Lots of crab eaters in every direction on every piece of ice. You can go for Zodiac cruises there, nice sunny day. This arch is easily 10 stories tall. And really wild geology on the beaches. And just take this in for a second. Pause on this one. This is probably 20 stories high. No, we can't drive under it. That would be very unsafe and probably the last time that driver ever works in the industry. This Zodiac that we see in the foreground is a good distance away from it. It's just the scale of everything in Antarctica is beyond what you could possibly imagine. So if you want to see something totally unique, this is the place. It's as far away as you can get. The closest thing you can get to seeing another planet while still remaining on Earth. It's just unbelievable. And down here we've got some other species. These are the elephant seals, which are on shore, enjoying their catastrophic molt, where they lose all of their skin all at once over a period of just a couple of weeks, so that they've got fresh skin so they can go back into the water where they spend most of their life and be protected from the cold, frigid water. Once they're enjoying this molt, they need to be all huddled together so that they can share that body heat. It doesn't smell so great here, but that's all part of visiting. And here's our expedition leader, Lauren, making sure that we are a safe distance away for us and for the wildlife. Yeah, beautiful face. So we're going to jump back north of the Antarctic Circle and back to the Gerlache, and this is Nieuwmeer Channel, and it's the site of one of the more well-known landings, which is called Port Lockroy. Port Lockroy is where there's a British base. Here we've got a couple islands. I'm going to dive on into the Google Street View. So we got a British base that was initially part of Operation Tabarin, there to keep an eye on any Germans that might show up during the Second World War. They didn't, but it was a spot initially for them to keep an eye on things, but now has become a site for scientific research, and you've always got a crew that is in town, and inside is a bit of a museum. You've got a lot of nesting gentoos all around, and we can visit inside. So everything is kept more or less as it was. A lot of the old pots and cans, some of the equipment of the time. So it's definitely a unique museum to be able to visit. You are in Antarctica after all, and it's a spot where there's a gift shop, because you haven't seen a gift shop in 8 days, and you're dying to spend your money. You can also send your postcards from here. So another bit of variety that we're going to have on this morning. And for our afternoon landing, we'll be hopping into Nico Harbor. Now you can see in this Google image, this Google Earth image, this was from the winter, because a lot of the sea ice has been coming in and then growing throughout the harbor here. We've got the landing, obviously it's very covered in snow, but let's jump in with some photos. It's a wonderful spot for a big hike, one of our more challenging hikes if you're up for it. But again, you've got this 100-meter length ship for scale, an enormous glacier on the right-hand side, really beautiful mirror image of this glassy water here. If you didn't want to do the hike, plenty to do on shore. There's a lot of rocks to sit on and just watch the penguins come and go. You might make a new friend. These gentoos are always up for a laugh. And Nico is always good for a nice Zodiac cruise. And you know, it is such a nice afternoon that this is probably going to be a really good spot for our polar plunge. So who in the chat, who's up for a polar plunge? Let's see some hands, yeah? Cass is in. You know, it might not be.
People in the chat box who are definitely interested in. We've got a couple of people who've done it. Benedict has done it twice.
Oh, well done, Benedict.
We've got
if you're concerned whether it's healthy or not, don't worry. Here's our onboard Dr. Albie. He's always on hand to make sure that you're doing okay. So what is the polar plunge, and what is the purpose? My mom says it's very ill-advised and not to do it, but you know, I'm always going to do it. So here we are, how it works. You get strapped in, you get down into your swimsuit, strapped into this harness, which our ABs here on the gangway have in their hands. So in case I seize up, they'll be able to pull me back in. So you're really excited. There's a lot of activity in the mudroom. We've got music playing. And then finally, the person ahead of you has made their way back. They're soaking wet. They have a little confused look on their face. You go down those steps, and then someone says, the camera's over here. So you leap, and you're looking at the camera, and you want to get the best shot, so you're really excited once you're mid-air. But then you start to fall, and you realize, I've made a huge mistake. The second your foot touches the water, you realize what's going on and that you're in for a bad ride. You fall a little farther, and you start to scream. It's not a scream of happiness anymore, it's bad news scream. And then it just gets even worse. When your chest hits, your lungs seize up, all the air is dispelled from you, and you are now gasping. And once your head hits, your brain is seized with cold, and every swear word you've ever heard in your life goes flying through the top of your head as fast as a freight train. And your only natural instinct is get me out of this environment, remove me from this water. But once you're out of the water, you're back in the mudroom, you're nice and warm, you got a shot to take, and you're ready to do it again 3 seconds later. So congrats to everyone that wants to do it. You're all crazy. You'll receive a certificate. It's totally official. When you upload your certificate to your LinkedIn page, just sit back and watch the world of opportunities open up for you. So congrats to everyone on the chat that's already done it. And for those heading down, can't wait to see you there. Now we're going to head up to this place, Wilhelmina Bay, the following morning, because we know that people have said that they wanted to see some killer whales and we've heard from another ship that was passing through the previous day, and apparently they saw some. So let's head on in, and we're going to have a morning zodiac cruise here in the bay. Now here we are. We're out in the zodiacs. We're taking our photos, but we're getting a lot of this brash ice, which is special in its own way, but there's no killer whales. So we haven't seen anything today, but that's all part of the expedition. You're going to have beautiful days, and you're going to have some more gray days like this. But these ethereal conditions, they just really add to the mystery of this place and the fact that it's not a zoo. You're going to come and you're going to hope to see some things, but and it may be the case or may not. But even on days like this, you've got city-sized glaciers in all directions and a lot of glacial ice in the water. So Wilhelmina Bay didn't have anything for us in terms of large wildlife, but for our afternoon, we're going to head up to Charlotte Bay and a place that we like called Portal Point, and we'll see what kind of luck we've got up here. Hop in the zodiacs, and again, we've got more huge monolithic pieces of ice, and it's just gangbusters for humpback whales. There's so many families in all directions that our 14 zodiacs can spread out, and then everyone's got their own little pod that we can stay with for a short period of time and have really great viewing, staying well out of those distances, turn the engine off, and then just watch and see, watch their behavior and see where they want to go. It's a really special experience when you hear that blow and everyone in the zodiac is really quiet. It's a time when they might be really close, and you get those great photos, and then people just start crying. I've seen eyes fill up with tears, and strangers hug each other, new friends hugging each other just for this beautiful shared experience. Portal Point, unbelievable. If you've had great humpback whale experiences, then you can let us all know about it in the chat. Really beautiful. You can see underwater. Someone's got an underwater camera here. A humpback whale is feeding these tiny little things in the water. These are the krill. Krill are the small little crustaceans that make up the very bottom of this food web. They begin as tiny little eggs that are released, that sink very deep into the water and then are pushed by the currents, driving towards the continent. And at the beginning of the season, they arrive towards the Antarctic continent, and they begin to rise. They're eating their yolk sac and as they're rising. Then when the sun is returned to Antarctica in the springtime, the phytoplankton is photosynthesizing. These krill now have the chance to feed on them, and it just creates this huge explosion of food. These tiny little krill, there's so much of them, they represent a huge biomass of about 500 million tons. And so as nature does, the larger animals follow that. The penguins, this is the key source of their diet, most of the seals as well, and the large giant baleen whales like this. So that huge amount of wildlife is all because of these tiny things. So it really represents that the importance of protecting the health of our oceans. Everything relies upon that. These tiny krill, they need to be able to survive in a healthy ocean, and as a result of that, all the other animals get to survive. It's what we really like to reinforce with our education program, and my really esteemed colleagues do a great job of breaking that down, both in the zodiacs and in our lectures and citizen science work, to make sure that everyone that comes down really thinking they're gonna have a great time, take some great photos of Antarctica, goes home really passionate about the need to protect the oceans. Now, our camping master, Matt, whilst we've been having fun checking out the humpback whales, he said he's been sneakily on land because this was our backup camping spot. And he said conditions are really great. The bridge says we're gonna have good conditions overnight, so we're gonna be going camping. So we head this evening, we're gonna set up our tents. We're always there to help you out. And it's just a beautiful sunset, nice Antarctic sunset. You see the snowy and icy mountains in the distance light up, beautiful ship. And our musician Pablo comes to shore and gives us a concert that we're never gonna forget on Antarctica. Pretty special, huh? It's been a nice time down here, but this is going to be our final operation in Antarctica, and so we're going to make it a good one. And we love Spurt Island. Spurt Island, as you can see, is just wonderful for a Zodiac cruise. A lot of these jagged rocks here in the water, lots of ice activity. It's a great spot for a bit of proper exploration down in Antarctica. So let's move on in, jump in the Zodiacs, and we've got these jagged rock peaks on all sides, lots of different alleyways that we can head on through, beautiful blue ice. These kind of photos, people won't believe what they're seeing, and none of these photos you're seeing on this really do it justice, so we're happy to welcome you as soon as we can get down there. Great photos, and we've got a leopard seal on one of the platforms here in Spurt, just taking a look. As we make our way back to the ship, another huge round of applause for our wonderful ABs, been keeping us safe as we get on and off the Zodiacs, welcoming us back in. And now we're going to be heading back up into the Drake as we say goodbye to Antarctica. But as we head on up, Sarah is actually up on deck. She's always there with her binoculars, and she sees something in the distance. And sure enough, off our 11 o'clock, we've got a pod of beautiful killer whales that are making their way through the ocean. So we zoom in on them, just frolicking. Again, it's not something that we could have predicted, but they have just shown up, and the magic of Antarctica has presented itself once again. So it's not something we were able to promise, but they just showed up. So obviously it's been a very fortuitous journey. Someone on this chat has brought the really good wildlife luck, so thank you to whoever that was. We've got some beautiful blows, just spectacular. So as a way to say thank you and to celebrate the voyage, we've got our crew band. They call themselves the Monkey Eating Eagles. These are the people that have been taking such good care of us. They turn out and they show up in the Polar Bear Bar, and they really rock the house. And so we can all together, this new family of travelers can come together and really have a good time up in the bar as we head back to Ushuaia. So that's our voyage to Antarctica, everyone. I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for turning out. Without you, we can't do this job that we love. Thank you to Cass for coordinating all of this. And on behalf of the team, just want to say we can't wait to see you down in Antarctica. Yeah, that's it, Cass. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. And thank you all for taking the time to connect with us and join Gadventures for our live virtual group tour. Neil gave us an exclusive experience being aboard the expedition ship, and I know that we all continue to dream about traveling. So this really brought that experience alive for us. If you were thinking back and reminiscing on your past expedition experience or living this for the first time, I know it was incredible for all of us. And one more thing, if you enjoyed your adventure with Neil, you can show your appreciation by tipping him through the PayPal link I'll be sharing in the chat box. This money goes directly to Neil, helping support him until he's able to get back to what he does best, and that's showing us our world in real life. And then until then, keep an eye out for more virtual tours being hosted by more CEOs from around the world. And until then, stay connected.
Cass, I just want to do one final shout out. Today, June 16 is very sort of special but sad anniversary for us. This is Sarah Alfred. She's wonderful, really inspiring leader for all of us on board the expedition and in the G Expedition family. She was an expedition leader as well as the commander at the Port Lockroy base for some time. And we lost her last year in the Ethiopian Airlines crash as she was heading to Nairobi to work with the UN on some environmental things that we can all be doing as an industry. Real great leader, very passionate about protecting our oceans and reducing plastics. And this would have been her birthday. And so, started by her family and friends, this initiative, Clean Up for Sarah, has started. So it's a chance to, really all it asks is perform a cleanup in your local community with some friends or on your own. maintain social distancing, of course. But a way to honor her is just do a nice neighborhood cleanup all week long. We're inviting that. If you want to learn more or post photos of your cleanup, then you can search Cleanup for Sarah on Facebook, and we would just really love for you all to be a part of that. And yeah, we love you, Sarah, and thank you to everyone that takes part.
Thank you, Neil, for sharing. This was a massive hit for not only the Gadventures community, but for the world. Sarah did so much greatness, and we'll be all participating in the cleanup today or this week, and I hope you all do the same as well.
So thank you very much, and for all past travelers and everyone on chat, I love seeing you, and thank you so much for hanging out today.
Definitely.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Neil. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope to see you on our tour soon. But for now, we'll stay connected through our virtual tours. And take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye. God bless.
Thanks, Cassandra. This was amazing.
Awesome. Thank you.